Paris. The city has barely begun to stir. Morning light falls softly across the stone, as if nothing important ever happens here. But you know better. You don't choose a ministry. You don't choose an office with a government seal on the door. You choose the Hôtel de Crillon.
A place where you can look official enough without being tied to anything you don't need. You didn't invite these men by accident. They aren't tourists. They aren't idle rich men. They make their money from metal.
From what remains after the story of things has come to an end. They arrive one by one, looking over the room, sizing each other up. You give them time to settle in. Only then do you enter, calm, composed, a man who has every right to speak. You introduce yourself simply and precisely. Deputy Director of a department within the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. No unnecessary details, just enough to prevent questions, and just enough to make them want to ask them later. You don't begin with an offer. You begin with a problem. The Eiffel Tower. Too expensive, too difficult to maintain, and controversial even among Parisians themselves. You say it calmly, almost wearily, like a man who has grown tired of explaining the obvious. Then you add the important part. The decision has already been made. For now, it's unofficial, and that's why you're all here. A pause. You need it, because the next number changes everything. 7,200 tons of metal. Not a symbol, not a landmark. Metal. And now you see their faces change. One man is already doing the math. Another pretends he isn't. Someone else is trying to figure out why he, of all people, was invited into this room. You don't offer them a deal. You create a situation in which a deal begins to feel inevitable. Then you add one final detail. The information is strictly confidential. There will be no official announcement. Not yet. That isn't a warning. It's an invitation. The meeting ends. Without signatures, without money changing hands, but with something more important. The feeling that they have been let inside something closed, something other people won't have access to. They leave, each carrying away not a question, but an opportunity. And you remain behind, calm, because you know something they don't. You aren't selling the tower anymore. You've already sold them the idea that they could be the first to turn it into 7,200 tons of metal. A few days pass, exactly long enough for that first rush of confidence to begin to crack. You don't hurry. You let doubt do the work for you. And then he comes back, André Poisson. This time, he's alone. No other businessmen, no extra eyes, none of the sense of security that comes with a crowd. Now it's not a meeting, it's a conversation. You choose the same setting, the Hôtel de Crillon, but everything feels different. He sits across from you, and almost immediately he starts with the questions that have been bothering him all these days. Why not the ministry? Why is everything so unofficial? Why him? He asks carefully, like a man afraid of hearing the wrong answer. You listen. You don't interrupt. You don't defend yourself. And that alone is enough to throw him off balance, because he expects excuses. You give him none. You pause, and then you slightly change your tone. Unofficially, almost awkwardly, you let him understand that your position is not exactly at the top of the ladder, that decisions like this are made higher up, that having access to information like this is a privilege in itself, and that sometimes people at your level have to rely on a little understanding. You never say the word bribe. It appears in his mind all by itself. And suddenly, all the strange details make sense. The unofficial meeting? Logical. The closed circle? Logical. The silence? Logical. The world falls back into a shape he can. He relaxes. Just a little, but it's enough. Now he's no longer looking for the trap. He's looking for a way into the deal. A pause. The most important pause of the entire conversation. And he makes his move. First, cash. He hands it over quickly, barely looking at you. Then, the check. The down payment, 70,000 francs. His hand moves confidently, as if the decision had been made long ago. You accept it calmly, without the slightest reaction, like a man for whom this is simply part of the procedure. And that's when the important thing happens. He can no longer turn back, because it's no longer about the money. It's about the fact that he has accepted the rules of the game. He has agreed to play. The conversation ends quietly. No ceremony, no final words. He leaves without a trace of doubt, because doubt has just become too expensive. And you remain where you are, knowing perfectly well that this is no longer about the Eiffel Tower. Not even about the money. It's about a man making a choice on his own to believe, and paying for that choice in advance. You don't linger. Not for a day, not even for an evening. The money is in your hands. The check has been cashed, and Paris has nothing left to offer you. A train station is useful because nobody remembers anybody there. Noise, faces, movement, everything blends into a single stream. You step into it, and disappear. The train pulls away smoothly, without a jolt, as if the city itself is letting you go without a struggle. Only now, as Paris begins to recede behind you, do you allow yourself to think about what has already happened. Not the money, the process. You replay the meeting in your mind, slowly, like a man checking not the result, but the precision of the execution. You have rules. You never wrote them down, but you always follow them. You go through them one by one. Be a patient listener. That, not talking, is what brings a con man good fortune. Never look bored. Wait for the other person to reveal his political views. Agree with him. Let him reveal his religious beliefs. You have the same ones. Hint at sex, but don't take the conversation any further unless he wants to. Never discuss illness, unless you can see that the other person truly wants to. Don't pry into personal matters. He'll tell you more than you could ever ask. Don't brag. Your importance should be obvious without explanation. Always be well dressed. Never get drunk. You don't judge the rules. You check them off. And the farther you get through the list, the calmer you become. because everything matches. Not one unnecessary word, not one unnecessary movement. Even his doubts worked exactly the way they were supposed to. You didn't convince him. You simply allowed him to arrive at the conclusion you wanted. The train rolls steadily on, rhythmically, as if repeating the same thought over and over. Everything was done right. You turn away from the window. No smile, no satisfaction. Only a brief, almost imperceptible sense of completion. Because this wasn't luck, it was a system. You began assembling your own catechism long before this journey. Back when you were simply sitting in silence, watching people enter an office and walk out of it as different people. But that's another story. You aren't planning anything yet. No schemes, no roles, no one else's money. You're simply sitting there. The room seems large, larger than it really is. A heavy desk, heavy curtains, and the clock. It ticks steadily, almost soothingly. This is your father's office. He is the head of the town, the man through whom decisions pass. People don't come to him just to talk. They come to get things decided. You sit off to the side. Most people barely notice you. And that's exactly why you see more than you should. The door opens. The first visitor walks in, confident. He speaks loudly, moves freely, almost without asking permission. Your father doesn't rush him. He listens, barely interrupts, lets him talk longer than necessary. And gradually, the man's tone begins to change on its own. His voice gets quieter. His words become more careful. You don't understand how it happens, but you see the result. The man walks out different from the way he came in. The next visitor is different from the start. More reserved, more careful. With him, your father speaks faster, clearly, briefly, leaving almost no pauses. And the man begins agreeing before he has even had time to formulate an objection. You notice it, not as a conclusion, more as a feeling. Another petitioner enters. This time, a man who hardly speaks at all. He waits. He watches. With him, your father changes. He becomes softer, quieter. He gives the man room. And the man begins to talk on his own. More than he intended, more than he needed to. You sit and watch. Different people, different voices, different purposes, and every time a different conversation. But the result is almost always the same. People walk out different. Sometimes more confident, sometimes quieter, but always changed. You begin to sense that there is something more here than words, that what matters isn't only what people say, but how they say it, and when. Who speaks first? Who pauses? Who gives ground? You don't put any of this into words. You simply watch and remember. Like someone who doesn't know the rules of the game yet, but already understands that there are rules, and that they change depending on who is sitting across from you. You haven't become the man you will one day be, but you're already beginning to try on different roles. The city
is Prague, the university, halls where you learn not only words, but manners.
And then there's the fencing hall. Things happen faster there than in your father's office. No pauses, no long conversations, only movement, reaction, a mistake. No one knows for certain what started that particular duel. A word, a look, or simply someone else's ego getting a little too close. It doesn't matter. What matters is how it ends. A sudden strike, almost too quick for anyone watching to notice, but enough to leave a mark, a scar. It stays on your face.
Not the neatest scar, not the most convenient one, but you see it differently, not as a consequence, but as an opportunity. Later, you'll tell different stories about how you got it, each one suited to the situation. Sometimes it was the war, sometimes pirates, sometimes a story filled with passion and almost completely lacking in facts. And every time, it works. Because people don't necessarily want the truth. They want the version that makes you into the person they want to see. You don't understand that right away, but you begin to feel it. A scar isn't just a wound. It's part of the image, another detail you can use. For now, though, it's simply a reason for your father to worry. He doesn't see a story in it. He sees a risk and decides that Prague isn't the place where you should continue your education. So you move on to the Sorbonne, a different city, a different rhythm, different rules, more words, fewer blows, and you quickly discover an advantage of your own. Languages. You learn them easily, almost without noticing. French, German, English, Italian, and one more, your native Czech. Paris teaches you differently. Not through words, not through lectures, through the pauses between them, and through tables, card tables. At first, you sit down as a student, curious, a little uncertain. The cards lie quietly on the table. The people don't. Someone laughs too loudly. Someone pretends not to care. Someone plays cautiously, but makes sure everyone notices. You watch. You barely play. You listen. You remember. Because you quickly understand something. Poker isn't really about the cards. It's about the person holding them. You start small. You try. You make mistakes. Sometimes you win. More often you don't. But that doesn't matter. You aren't counting money. You're counting reactions. Who holds your gaze too long? Who plays too quickly? Who raises when he's afraid? And gradually, something changes. You begin to see more than everyone else. Not combinations, people. The tables become different. The game slows down. You no longer react. You create. You let someone win when you need to. You lose when it serves you. And you wait. Because you know the important part doesn't happen during the deal. It happens between deals, in the conversations, in the pauses, in the way a man holds his cards when he thinks nobody is watching. Paris is full of places like that. Rooms without signs, back rooms where people know each other by name and by their debts. The games are serious there. People come to prove themselves. And that's where you begin showing up more often. At first,
You're just another player. Then people begin to notice you, carefully, curiously. You don't rush. You don't win too much. You don't make dramatic moves. You let them get used to you. And only then do you start taking their money. Gradually, cleanly, without making a sound. One table, then another, until you're sitting across from the men who consider themselves masters. Men who believe they've seen everything. Men who believe they can't be surprised. You sit down with them, no unnecessary words, and you play quietly, precisely, without emotion. One by one, they begin to lose. Not immediately, but inevitably. Because you're not playing against their cards. You're playing against their confidence. You're no longer a student. You're the man people talk about. The man they invite. And the man they worry about. In practice, you've become the best. The best card cheat in Paris. After beating everyone who was considered a master of the Lombard table. No scandals, no proof, just results. Money doesn't change everyone. For some people, it simply lets them become themselves a little sooner. Paris is getting too small for you. The card rooms, the familiar faces, the same conversations. Everything is beginning to repeat itself. And you know the price of repetition too well. It makes a man predictable. So you start moving on. Transatlantic cruises are perfect. Huge liners crossing between continents. Several days at sea. People who are bored. People with plenty of money. People who believe they control their lives because they can afford a first-class ticket. And cards. Always cards. At first, it looks like entertainment. A friendly game after dinner. Cigars, music, laughter. Very wealthy people like to pretend that money means nothing to them. On a ship, everything becomes easier. The ocean cuts a man off from his ordinary life, from caution, from schedules, from the possibility of simply walking away. What remains are habits. And habits are weaknesses that repeat themselves. You never hurry. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you let someone win. You even congratulate the winner with genuine pleasure because you know something. The most profitable game usually begins after your victim's first victory. You're not cheating in the usual sense. No guns, no forged documents. You're simply playing cards and simply winning. Sometimes people leave angry. Sometimes impressed, but almost no one can say exactly when the game stopped following their rules. You move from one liner to another, from one card room to the next, and gradually, being a card cheat stops being an occupation. It becomes a way of life. The day begins in a first-class cabin, continues in the dining room, and ends with an evening game. Someone deals the cards again, and you smile just enough for the man across the table to think, tonight is going to be my lucky night. Then the war begins, and the ocean changes. The transatlantic cruises that had seemed like an endless celebration begin disappearing, one after another. Routes are closed, passengers become fewer. Too much anxiety, too few people willing to play cards in the middle of a world beginning to fall apart. But you don't know how to live quietly. And more importantly, you don't know how to live poor. So you end up in America, a country of enormous fortunes, quick decisions, and people who are convinced they're smart enough to get rich even faster. You understand something very quickly. America loves miracles, especially miracles that look like business. And that's how the Romanian box appears. A small device, wood, metal, a few handles, a handful of strange-looking parts. At first glance, it looks almost ridiculous. But only at first glance. You never start with the box. You start with the image. Expensive suits, fine hotels, generous tips. Stories about money that comes far too easily. You brag almost excessively, so much that it begins to look believable. People start asking questions on their own. Where does the money come from? What kind of business are you in? How does it work? And at first, you refuse to answer, with a slight smile, almost reluctantly, like a man who shouldn't be revealing a secret. That's important, because people want most what they believe you're not willing to sell them. Only then do you show them the box. Carefully, almost respectfully, you tell them the story. Romania, secret technology, a perfect way to counterfeit American money. The machine, supposedly, can print $100 bills. One bill about every 6 hours. You explain it almost scientifically. Too fast would be dangerous. Slowly is safe. That's what makes the device so valuable. Then comes the demonstration, the most important part of the performance. You load the machine. You wait. And right on schedule, it produces a brand new $100 bill. A real one. Perfect. Because several genuine bills have already been hidden inside. But the man watching doesn't know that. He's already thinking about something else. How much can he make? How quickly will the investment pay for itself? How clever he was to get in before everyone else. You almost never bargain. $10,000, 20, sometimes 30. The price only makes the desire stronger, because nobody gets excited about a cheap miracle. And the moment the money is in your hands, you disappear immediately. No delay. By the time the new owner realizes that the box has stopped printing money, you're already far away. But the most beautiful part is something else. Almost nobody goes to the police, because how exactly do you explain what happened? Officer, I'd like to report a man who sold me a machine for printing counterfeit money. No. These people keep quiet because of greed, because of shame, because they're afraid. And that's why the Romanian box works again and again and again. Because your real product isn't the machine. It's the human desire to get far too much, far too easily. The idea doesn't come to you in silence. It comes in the middle of an ordinary morning. A newspaper, coffee, other people's conversations. A small article that most people would read and forget without a second thought. They're planning to tear down the Eiffel Tower? Maintaining the city's landmark is becoming too expensive. The metal is rusting. Repairs require enormous amounts of money.
The government is discussing its options. You read the article again, and almost immediately you understand the essential thing. People will believe almost anything if the decision looks bureaucratic enough. The tower is too big, too famous, too impossible for anyone to suspect a fraud. And that's exactly why the plan might work. You begin preparing, without rushing. As always, first, the paperwork. Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs letterhead. Seals, signatures. Not perfect, just convincing enough for people who already want to believe. Then, the candidates. You choose 5. Not the richest men. That's important. The biggest players are too cautious. You need men who are successful enough to take part in a major deal, and ambitious enough to be afraid of missing an opportunity. Scrap metal dealers. Men accustomed to seeing the world in tons, contracts, and the price of steel. Each receives an official invitation, a confidential meeting, strictly between us, a matter of national importance. And it works perfectly, because nothing excites a man quite like the possibility of being let in on someone else's secret. The meeting takes place at the Hôtel de Crillon. Luxury, silence, the right waiters, the right carpets. You don't appear as a con man. You appear as the deputy director of a department within the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. A calm government official reluctantly dealing with an unpleasant but necessary decision. The dismantling of the Eiffel Tower. 7,200 tons of metal, and you can almost feel their heads spinning as they take in the number. But the meeting isn't for selling anything. Not yet. It's simply another game of poker. You watch, you listen, you wait. Who is too greedy? Who is too cautious? Who wants to look smarter than everyone else? And very quickly, you understand who is sitting across from you. André Poisson.
Not the biggest player, but the right one. A newcomer, ambitious, desperate to move into the big leagues of business. Men like that fear 2 things: losing money and missing an opportunity.
And the second one is usually worse. You notice how hard he tries to look calm, how carefully he hides his excitement, how closely he listens, almost like a poker player who has already placed his bet and is still hoping nobody has noticed. And then you know, you've chosen your victim. You win and disappear. As always, Paris is left behind, along with the man who has just bought the Eiffel Tower from you. You leave for Vienna, a beautiful city, a convenient city, a city where you can quietly read the newspapers and wait. You wait for the scandal, arrests, headlines, police. But nothing happens. One day passes, then another. The newspapers are silent. And you understand, André Poisson never went to the police. Too embarrassing, too humiliating to explain exactly how he was fooled. It's almost disappointing, because truth be told, you're getting bored. And boredom is almost a professional hazard for a man like you. One day, just to kill some time, you walk into a jewelry store, just to look. Although, no, men like you never look at anything just because. That's where you see it. The pearl, large, almost perfectly round. You pick it up, hold it to the light, and the combination comes together almost instantly, as if the entire game has already been played out in your mind. You bargain a little, not because you're cheap, because it's part of the ritual. Then you buy the pearl and disappear for a few days. Then you come back. The same store, the same expensive suit, the same quiet confidence. And almost casually, you ask, "Do you happen to have another pearl like this? They would make a beautiful pair of earrings for my wife. Price is no object." The jeweler looks embarrassed, shakes his head. No, pearls like this are almost impossible to find. But you don't insist. You simply nod, looking mildly disappointed, and leave. The jeweler is left thinking. A very wealthy customer, a very expensive purchase, and a chance to make even more money. That's enough. Almost running, he begins visiting every store, workshop, and pawn shop he knows. He asks, he searches, and finally, he finds one. A small pawn shop, a perfectly round pearl, almost identical. Only the price is twice as high. But that no longer matters because the jeweler has already counted the money in his head. He buys the pearl, returns to his shop, and waits. 1 day, 2, 3, but the wealthy customer never comes back. And that's when the jeweler starts looking more closely at the pearl, very carefully. He studies it until suddenly he understands. It's the same one, the very same pearl he sold to you a few days earlier. He rushes back to the little pawn shop, but the shop is gone. No sign, no owner, nothing. Just an empty storefront, and the terrible realization that comes too late. Because all this time, he wasn't selling a pearl. He wasn't even selling the promise of a profit. He was selling a man's own greed back to him. And you, sitting comfortably in your train compartment, pick up the morning newspaper. Still no news from Paris.
You lean back and take apart another perfectly staged performance. Or, if you prefer, another game of poker in which the cards never mattered at all.
Every successful con carries one dangerous risk. It starts to feel repeatable. You've already done the impossible. You've sold the Eiffel Tower, you got the money, you disappeared, and, most importantly, you got away with it. And somewhere deep inside, a dangerous thought begins to take shape. Why not do it again? You return to Paris, almost casually, like a poker player who once took the whole pot at this table and now believes he knows every card in his opponent's hands. The script barely changes. The same paperwork, the same Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs letterhead, the same carefully cultivated atmosphere of secrecy. Only this time, there are 6 candidates, and everything goes perfectly. Again, you watch. Who is greedy? Who is vain? Who dreams of climbing the ladder too quickly? And you find the right candidate. Another game of poker, but this time, something changes. One of the businessmen begins to have doubts. Not loudly, not immediately, but enough
to check. And checking is the one thing even the most beautiful story cannot survive. He goes to the police, and for the first time in a long while, luck turns slightly against you. You find out quickly, and you don't try to finish the game, because a good player knows sometimes the best move is to get up from the table. You disappear almost instantly. Train stations, trains, false names, other people's documents. Paris dissolves behind the windows. This time, there is no triumph, but there are no handcuffs either. You run to the United States. America is loud. Money is made quickly here and lost even faster. And among the men who consider themselves the masters of the country, there is one name that carries a particular weight: Al Capone. A man around whom almost no ordinary conversation remains. Only rumors, fear, and numbers. You don't play games with him. You don't cheat him. You keep your distance. And that's exactly why you decide to go see him. Of course, you don't arrive as a con man. You arrive as a businessman. Calm, confident, a good suit, good manners. You tell him about an extraordinarily profitable deal, almost guaranteed. All he needs to do is invest $50,000. Capone listens carefully, very carefully. Men like him don't become rich unless they know how to smell a lie. You don't hurry. You don't pressure him. You don't try to persuade him. You simply present an opportunity. And it works. Capone gives you the money. $50,000. A fortune, even for him. And then something strange happens. You do nothing. Absolutely nothing. No investment, no scheme, no attempt to disappear with the money. You simply put it in a bank vault and wait. 2 months. Exactly long enough for a good performance to work. Then you go back to Capone. Same calm manner, but with very bad news. The deal has fallen through. The money wasn't lost, but there was no profit to be made. And you returned the entire $50,000. Every last dollar. Capone doesn't understand what he's seeing because it violates the most basic rule of his world. People always try to steal. Always. But you don't. You return the money. Honestly. Almost honestly. Capone studies you carefully and reaches exactly the conclusion you wanted him to reach. The man sitting across from him isn't a con man. He's a man he can trust. A rare thing. Almost impossibly rare. And then Capone does exactly what you were hoping for. He gives you $5,000. Just like that. For your honesty. For your integrity. For making the attempt. You thank him, calmly pocket the money, and leave. Because sometimes the most profitable con isn't stealing at all. It's letting a man pay you himself for the privilege of believing you're honest. In time, every successful scheme begins to wear you out. Too little money, too much movement, too much dependence on the particular person sitting across from you. Poker is fine when you're 20, when you want risk, improvisation, the beauty of the game. But now you begin to think
differently. Not like a card cheat, like an industrialist.
By the early 1930s, America is drowning in the Great Depression. Banks are collapsing, people are losing their jobs. Cash has become almost a physical symbol of survival. And that's when you realize something. If the whole country is obsessed with money, then the most profitable product is money itself. Not stolen, printed. Counterfeiters existed long before you. There were plenty of them, but most were craftsmen, small-time operators, bad paper, bad ink, bad equipment, and sooner or later, an arrest. You approach it differently. As a business, a real business. You assemble a team, engravers, printers, paper specialists, the best people money can buy. The key man is Tom Shaw, a brilliant printer, quiet, almost invisible. But it is his hands that will eventually make the United States Secret Service nervous. You don't work in basements, you work in well-equipped facilities, with discipline approaching the level of a factory. Several printing presses, different people handling different stages. Someone is responsible for the paper, someone for engraving, someone for aging the bills. Even distribution is organized like logistics. For the first time, you turn crime into an assembly line, and the results are frighteningly good. Your counterfeit dollars are described as nearly perfect. Some cashiers don't notice them at all. Some banks don't either. Later, Secret Service agents will acknowledge that they were among the finest counterfeit bills of their time. The money spreads across the country. Thousands of dollars, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Some estimates put the amount of counterfeit money moving through your network at more than $1 million. In the early 1930s, that's a fortune, an enormous fortune. But something else matters more. You're no longer sitting at a card table. You're sitting over a map of the country, watching where shipments go, which cities are safer, where the police are paying closer attention. You're no longer simply a con man. You're a manager, the director of a vast illegal enterprise. And perhaps, for the first time in your life, you begin to believe that you've built a system that can function without you. That's a dangerous thought, because great criminal schemes are rarely destroyed by greed. More often, they're destroyed by scale. Too many people, too much money, too much noise, and somewhere nearby, someone is already beginning to ask questions that cannot be answered with a charming smile. And somewhere nearby, another system is beginning to stir. The system of the state. The United States Secret Service is on your trail. While Lustig's empire keeps running, counterfeit dollars continue to spread across the country. His people keep getting paid, and the presses keep running almost non-stop. The United States Secret Service begins hunting you in earnest. Not a small-time counterfeiter anymore. A system. And government systems differ from criminal ones in one important way. They can lose individual battles almost indefinitely, but they cannot afford to lose the war. Agents gather information for years. Names, addresses, routes, who meets whom, who rents which rooms, who buys equipment. Gradually, the space around you begins to close. You're still free, but your freedom is getting smaller.
You change cities, names, documents. By this point, you have around 50 aliases, forged passports, glasses, mustaches, different suits. All your life, you've built yourself into a man who cannot be confined to a single identity. But now, you're up against a machine that knows how to put the pieces together. And eventually, they catch you. No dramatic shootout, no spectacular chase. Just a moment when there are more men with badges than there are ways for you to disappear. They arrest you right on Broadway. You're carrying a suitcase filled with expensive clothes. Then they find your hidden stash, $51,000, and printing plates for counterfeit bills. It looks like the game is over. But you've lived too long as a man who believes every lock is simply a problem waiting to be solved. The escape is almost theatrical. Bed sheets tied into knots, a window, a few minutes of silence. And the man half the country already considers caught disappears again. The newspapers love it. The public loves it too, because America has always had a soft spot for criminals who seem smarter than the system. But the problem is that the escape changes nothing. If anything, it makes things worse. Now, the hunt becomes personal. Too many agents, too many photographs, too many people who know your face. You keep trying to play. You change names, cities, your appearance. But this isn't poker anymore. It's mathematics. And the numbers are slowly turning against you. They arrest you again. This time, for good. A quick trial, a sentence. No more of the old glamour. No expensive hotels, no luxurious rooms. No people dreaming of buying the impossible. Only the state. Slow, clumsy, persistent. But eventually, it wears down the man who spent his entire life trying to prove that rules existed only for other people. You are sentenced to 20 years in the toughest prison in the United States, the federal prison on Alcatraz, a stone island in cold water where the system sends men it no longer intends to let go. You don't know it yet, but you'll spend only 11 years there. Your body will give out first. Pneumonia. A remarkably ordinary cause of death for a man who once sold the Eiffel Tower. But you'll have plenty of time to think. In prison, a man either goes mad or begins to understand himself a little better. All your life, you've believed your greatest talent was the ability to deceive people. But that's not quite true. People were deceived before you, and they'll be deceived after you. Your real talent was something else. You understood that almost everyone dreams of being special, richer than the others, smarter than the others, closer to a secret than everyone else. You simply sold people that dream, very expensively and very beautifully. You didn't crack safes. You didn't put a gun to anyone's head. You created stories people wanted to believe for themselves. But in the end, you made the same mistake as so many great con men before you. Vanity. Not greed. Vanity. It wasn't enough for you to win. You needed to feel like the smartest man in the room. Smarter than the police, smarter than the banks,
smarter than the government. You had been winning for too long. And when you die in 1947, your death certificate will read Robert W. Miller. Occupation, salesman. And perhaps that's the most accurate description of your entire life. Because you really did sell everything. Money, status, hope, greed, fear, and the impossible. An entire Eiffel Tower.